Shalom. Today you're joining me from a recording titled Gratitude, Modin, Anachnu, Lach. Before we start analyzing different sources from both biblical, rabbinical, and secular sources, I would like to read you a few quotes that I found, some very interesting, some very profound, and some very amusing. So the first quote from Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel on the theme of gratitude. He says as follows: the surest way to suppress our ability to understand the meaning of God and the importance of worship is to take things for granted. Peter Davison said about gratitude, there's only one surprise: to be alive. And that may be forgotten daily, if daily not remembered. I found a very other quote that you all know very well. This is taken from Pirkei Avot. It's a rabbinical source. Who is rich? He who is happy in what he has. As it says, when you eat the labor of your hands, happy you will be, and it will go well with you. Finally, a more amusing quote from Rabbi Nachman of Breslev that says, gratitude rejoices with her sister joy, and is always ready to light a candle and have a party. Gratitude doesn't much like the old cronies of boredom, despair, and taking life for granted. So let's start with the first introduction of the idea of gratitude, which is a very a central theme in the holiday of Shavuot. So during the time of the temple, on the holiday of Shavuot, the people would bring their first fruits to the temple as offerings in gratitude for their harvest. This would be called bikurim, first fruits. Those first fruits were brought to the temple, were the choicest fruits, and represented the best results of the hard, dedicated work of the people that worked in the field. Let's see a little bit of the verses. A quote from Deuteronomy, chapter 6, verse 5 and 10. You shall then recite as follows before the eternal God. My father was a fugitive or wandering Arami. He went down to Egypt with meager numbers and sojourned there. But there he became a great and very populous nation. The Egyptians dealt harshly with us and oppressed us. They imposed heavy labor upon us. We cried to the Eternal, the God of our fathers, and the Eternal heard our plea and saw our plight, our misery and our oppression. The Eternal freed us from Egypt by a mighty hand, by an outstretched arm and awesome power, and by signs and wonders. God brought us to this place and gave us this land, a land of flowing with milk and honey. Wherefore I now bring the first fruits of the soil which you, O Eternal, have given me. So it's quite obvious that the verse 5 to verse 10 in Deuteronomy is a very deep and religious expression of gratitude, both in its content and also its in action. While a person would work very hard through the whole year in harvesting, and those that work in the field know how hard of a work it is, and the labor that you have to put in the effort, and they are bringing their first fruits. And what's so amazing about that is that anyone that is planting a field and sees the first fruit blossom in his field becomes very attached to it. Imagine you're in the field and you're working tirelessly for months or almost an entire year, depending on what you're growing. And there you go, you're going out in the field and you see your first fruits blossom. And you see the beauty of the first fruits. And from those fruit that you've toiled and worked so hard for, you are expressing your gratitude and acknowledging that God is the one that brought you those that blessing. So that in itself of bringing the first fruit to the temple would be a great sign or a great display of one's gratitude towards the blessing of God. Furthermore, once that the person would bring these fruits up to the temple, he would also express it verbally. And in the text that we just saw, he would have to recite a few verses and expressing his gratitude. So before continuing our exploration of Jewish texts on gratitude, let's see first a few secular we'll look a little bit about a few secular sources on beliefs of gratitude that come from modern day research. These findings come out of an area of study known as positive psychology. Now, most of us know psychology to be the study of aberrations. Positive psychology, on the other hand, is the study of mentally healthy people and what makes people happy. In these findings, gratitude has been identified as the forgotten factor, quote unquote, in happiness research. So let's see the first text on gratitude interventions and psychological and physical well-being, and then how do we measure the grateful disposition. So in an experimental comparison, those who kept gratitude journals on a weekly basis exercised more regularly, reported fewer physical symptoms, felt better about their lives as a whole, and were more optimistic about the upcoming week compared to those who recorded hassles or neutral events. So that's I think that's quite a revelation. I mean, keeping a gratitude journal instead of recording hassles or neutral events could be not only healthy for your mental health, but also your physical ones. That's quite a revelation. And it's very interesting that many parts of our daily services or our blessings, where we'll see the religious text as we move forward, the Jewish texts that speak about gratitude, how this is kind of writing your own gratitude in contrast of maybe reading it from the Siddur, when you're expressing gratitude, when you're reciting a blessing, or you're ultimately reciting a blessing that was written by the sages. And here we're doing the same thing in this experiment, but it's us ourselves. The only difference is we're doing it ourselves. We're writing kind of like the positive things that are happening to us in our gratitude journals, according to this study. A related benefit was observed in the realm of personal goal attainment. Participants who kept gratitude lists were more likely to have made progress toward important personal goals, whether academic, interpersonal, health-based, over a 2-month period compared to subjects in the other experimental conditions. Now, measuring the grateful disposition. So well-being. Let's talk about how do we measure that. So we're still in this experiment, and grateful people report higher levels of positive emotions, the report says. Life satisfaction, vitality, optimism, and lower levels of depressions and stress. This is still in the experimental comparison. The disposition towards gratitude appears to enhance pleasant feeling, status, more than it diminishes unpleasant emotions. Grateful people do not deny nor ignore the negative aspects of life. So that's on the well-being. In spirituality, measuring the grateful disposition in spirituality, those who regularly attend religious services and engage in religious activities such as prayer and reading religious materials score more likely to be grateful. Grateful people are more likely to acknowledge a belief in the interconnectedness of all life and the commitment to and responsibility to others. Gratitude does not require religious faith, says the report, but faith enhances the ability to be grateful. Now, I think that this is also a very great revelation to those that attend and those that don't attend. I think this is quite a striking revelation based on a secular report that those that attend religious services and engage in religious activities are known to be more grateful and express gratitude. Although, as we just said, it's not a requirement, but this enhances the ability of being to be grateful. So I don't know about you, as I mentioned, I find this quite striking and interesting, fascinating even, to find this in circular studies and experiments that were brought to us. Now, so we've just seen a research on gratitude and thankfulness. Let's go back now a little bit to rabbinical understanding of what gratitude is. So in the Talmud Bavli uses a story to explain the idea of akarat tov. Akarat tov as being gratitude and being grateful. And that is the Hebrew, by the way, I'm sorry if I did not explain it just now. That is the Hebrew term for gratitude, hakarat tov. And if we were to actually translate literally this word, hakarat tov, meaning hakara, meaning recognizing, hatov, the good. So literally translating is recognizing that the good that someone has bestowed upon us, whether it's a friend, whether it's a parent, whether it's God. It's a recognition, according to this, the translation in Hebrew is recognizing the good things that are found around us. So I am not sure what is the definition in the dictionary for gratitude, but that is the translation of akarat tov, recognizing and the good that is around us and bestowed upon us. So and according to this, I would say that one tool for practicing gratitude is the ability to recognize the good that is already ours. And I think this is very well expressed. And one of the quotes that we just heard about from Pirkei Avot, who is rich? One is that is happy with the labor at his hands. Meaning recognizing already what we have is the greatest tool of practicing gratitude. And again, I think this joins very well the idea of gratitude, the way it's translated from Hebrew, of recognizing the good. Not as I mentioned, recognizing the good that already exists, and not only recognizing or hoping for the good that we wish that it will come, but now, in the present, recognizing the good things that are around, that we have, and that we have already, and not just hoping for them, not just in a hope for the good. So let's see this text from, and I'll quote it from the Talmud Bavli, as I just mentioned. Ben Zoma, which was a Talmudic sage, used to say, "What does a good guest say? How much trouble my host has taken for me. how much meat he set before me, how much wine he set before me, how many cakes he set before me, and all the trouble he has taken was only for my sake. But what does a bad guest say? How much, after all, has my guest, my host, put himself out? I have eaten one piece of bread. I have eaten one slice of meat. I have drunk one cup of wine. All the trouble my host has taken was only for the sake of his wife and children. Um, right. So, um, yeah, I don't know how many of you have ever met such a guest, such a bad guest that said that, or we can't really know if anybody is thinking about that. But I surely never heard someone say anything like that. But maybe it could be. I would like to think that nobody would say such a thing. It could be that somebody's thinking of it, and maybe at times, even when you are at somebody's house and you're a guest, you're not thinking of it. But when, if ever someone will confront you, will confront that person, this may come out. I remember myself that while speaking to a person, and he was very upset at one of his friends, and I knew both of them fairly well, I would say, and I knew what kind of relationship they had, and one of them really got upset at the other one, and they haven't been speaking for quite a few days now, and the friend that was upset with the other felt that his friend cheated him for something, and I'm not going to get into details of that, and he felt cheated by him, and he told me, he approached me and said, Rabbi, how can he do that? I don't understand him. Well, I thought we were friends, and he cheated me, and I tried to kind of, speak to him and knock some sense into him. Let's put it this way. And while we were exchanging he was sharing with me his feeling, and I told him, look, how many times did your friend invite you over because you were alone at home, and you didn't have the ability of you didn't have anywhere to eat supper, or you haven't prepared supper, or someone didn't prepare supper for you at home, and he invited you to his house and everything. And his reaction was something, unfortunately, very close to what we just read. His reaction was, well, anyways, his wife made supper for him and for herself, and I was just kind of joining in to the supper. So they didn't do all that for me. And so I think that is exactly what the Ben Zoma was trying to say. We might not think about at the moment when we're eating our supper at this friend's house. We definitely won't say it to our host. We might not even think it. But maybe when we're upset and when we were confronted into a certain situation which we dislike, the effect of being ungrateful might take expression. Instead of realizing what this person has done for us and looking at the good that they have done for us in the present, someone that's ungrateful will always look at the other side and try to find a reason where there's not really not really expressing gratitude. But someone that is conscious and someone that is understands the importance of living life and being grateful for what he has, and recognizing the good, would definitely would not say something like that. He would say what Ben Zoma said at the beginning of this Talmud: look at all the trouble my host has done for me, and so forth. So again, this is a great example of recognizing the good that is around us. So that's the first rabbinical understanding of hakarat tov, recognizing the good, and the example that we just brought from Ben Zoma. So I kind of leaning into another source, a rabbinical understanding of this idea of gratitude, which is in the Talmud Bavli and Berachot 35a, and over there it's an expression of gratitude in a different way. Not only so, the example that we've brought from the Talmud Bavli and Ben Zoma is an example of gratitude towards a fellow friend. Here, the example is the whole idea and the whole concept of berachot that we will introduce in a second. So the idea that we express by the rabbis is that when we open up to the trait of gratitude, we are able to see clearly how much good there is in our lives. By consciously engaging in the practice of gratitude, we become grateful, which in turn transforms us into people who can find positive in life. Right? So being grateful is just like everything else, takes practice. And if we put our practice to it and we put our heads to it and we repeat certain things on a daily basis that expresses gratitude, we could hopefully become more grateful to and being conscious of the good that is around us. There is an understanding that to be grateful, as I just mentioned, takes a lot of practice and effort. Now, this practice by no means ignores that we will still live with pain, or that we will lack, or that we lack for important things in our lives. It does, however, provide us with a tool to help us balance our focus between the things we lack and the good we have. So I think what I'm trying to say is that being grateful is not necessarily the problem solver for everything, all of the things we lack in our life or the pains that we're going. But it does find a balance. And the balance here is very important, because when a person does not recognize gratitude, when a person is only sees the half empty cup all the time and does not recognize the good that is around us, this is where, God forbid, depression and negativity could be found very close to a person when he doesn't express it. So gratitude is not some magical formula to find solution for everything we lack or the pains or anything that we go through, but it is to find that balance and focus on the positive in order to kind of find a balance between the things that we have and the things that we lack. So let's see together the source from the Talmud Bavli. Our rabbis taught it is forbidden to a man to enjoy anything of this world without a blessing, without benediction. And if anyone enjoys anything of this world without a benediction, a beracha, he commits sacrilege. Rabbi Judah said in the name of Samuel, to enjoy anything of this world without benediction is like making personal use of things consecrated to heavens, since it says, the earth is the eternal's and the fullness thereof. Rabbi Levi contrasted two texts. It is written, the earth is the eternal's and the fullness thereof. And it is also written, the heavens are the heavens of the eternal, but the earth has God given to the children of man. Answers Rabbi Levi, there is no contradiction between these two sources. In the one case, it is before a blessing has been said. In the other case, after. Now, So here is, let me just elaborate on this last point between Rabbi Levi, so it's clear. So one verse implies that the earth belongs to God, and the other verse says that no, the heavens belong to God, the earth belongs to human beings. The conclusion of the Gemara is that there's no contradiction between the two verses. The first verse that implies that the earth belongs to human beings and the heavens belong to God is after the blessing. But before the blessing, the earth belongs to God. Once we have made a blessing on something, before we eat, for example, before we consume something, before we make a blessing, that, my friends, belong to God. After you have made a blessing, you have received kind of like permission from God to use that certain thing for yourself. So before the blessing, the earth belongs to God. After the blessing, God has given it to us. So back to this idea is this Talmudic source expresses again the idea of kind of practicing. When we recite a blessing before eating something, when we recite a blessing before doing a mitzvah, before any of these things, whether it's in prayer, whether it's in a blessing before we eat, or after we wear a nice clothing and we say Shechianu, and all of these blessings are actually different expressions of practicing gratitude. And this is exactly what we wanted to bring out with this, is that gratitude is acquired through daily practice. And our sages understood that for a person to find good balance in his life, and not only focusing on the things that he is lacking, but also recognizing the good that he has, is by reciting those daily blessing. And by doing so, as we mentioned, that could be a great tool in practice to acquire the ability of recognizing the good that we have around us. And that is the that is the point, not the single point, but one of the main focal points that there is in the recital of daily blessings that should ultimately bring us to gratitude. Now, so we've just seen two rabbinical sources. Let's go see the idea of brachot in the Bible, in the Torah. So we've seen so far that blessings are one of the tools Judaism gives us to express gratitude. One way that brachot help us practice gratitude is that they can help us to slow down our busy lives. They create stopping points as we move through our daily routine. Rather than mindlessly moving through the day, brachot serve to push us to stop and reflect on what we have. As I mentioned, they're a way to express gratitude so that we don't rush through the day without acknowledging that we have what we have. If you look at the Tanakh, for example, for the brachot we recite today, you won't find them, because in the Tanakh we don't have these brachot. They're rabbinical ones. You will find that the beginning of our modern that these brachot really that are relatively modern. On the other hand, in the Torah, we read about individual who reacted to God's world by uttering gratitude in a specific way. Now, these expressions of gratitude to God established the beginning of the fixed pattern in the bracha. And that means that ultimately a reaction of gratitude by one of the patriarch, or whether it's Abraham, and we'll see later on Jethro and David and so forth, were actually a reaction for God's blessing. Our sages, as we mentioned, incorporated these expressions of gratitude by fixing a daily blessings for us to kind of take a stop and look at the things that we have in our lives and to focus into those things. So let me just give a few examples from the Torah in Genesis. So these are biblical occasions that inspired brachot. So one of them is, upon finding a wife for Isaac, Abraham's servant Elazar says, "Blessed is the Eternal, Baruch Adonai, the God of my master Abraham, who has not withheld his steadfast love from my master." Another example is Yitro, Moses' father-in-law, Jethro, response when Moses tells him about the miraculous events that Israel encountered on their journey from slavery to redemption. Blessed is the Eternal, Baruch Hashem, who saved you from the hand of the Egyptians. Again, an expression of an expression of gratitude, of inspired brachot. David expresses the gratitude to God for his son Solomon's succession to the throne. Baruch Hashem, blessed is the Eternal, the God of Israel, Elokei Israel, was giving this day one to sit on my throne, and my eyes have seen it. Again, and we find another example with Ruth. Upon Ruth giving birth to a child, the Israelite women expressed their happiness to Naomi through a bracha to God. Baruch Hashem asher lo hishbit lach goel. Blessed is the Eternal, who has not withheld from you a redeeming kinsman. Before I proceed to maybe a story, there's also, so though we've just seen biblical occasion that inspired brachot. Let's see some of the rabbinical blessing. Blessed Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam Hamotzi Lachem Min Haaretz, that you all know very well. Blessed are you, Hashem, our God, ruler of the universe, who brings forth bread from the earth. Blessed are you, Hashem, our God, ruler of the universe, who sanctifies us with his commandments and commands us to kindle the light of Shabbat. Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam Asher Kiddushanu Be'itzotav V'tzivanu La'adlik Ner Shabbat. I remember once I was asked by a person about what I say Baruch Hashem all the time. And he told me, Rabbi, I just want to ask you something. What is this Baruch Hashem that you say all the time? Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem. Every time I talk to you in a conversation, you say it a few times. 2 or 3 times in our encounters when I ask you, how are you doing? Baruch Hashem. So, how's your family? Baruch Hashem. How is your parnasah? Baruch Hashem. What's going on? Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem. What about everything else? Everything is Baruch Hashem. So I told him, yes, Baruch Hashem. Everything comes from Hashem. So, and I think that this is really also an expression of our gratitude. To someone that maybe is not used to saying Baruch Hashem for everything, Maybe it could sound a little bit annoying, and it could sound repetitive and redundant. Yeah, good. You say Baruch Hashem. When you pray, when you wake up in the morning, you say Modeh Ani. You say it one time. Why do you have to say it every time? But again, according to what we just learned, the Baruch Hashem is again a stopping point, if you will. It's not if you will. It is a stopping point. It's a stopping point to remind us how we have to be grateful. And the more we practice, as we mentioned, and saying Baruch Hashem and recognizing it's recognizing the good, and that helps us a lot of being much more grateful people than we usually would not if we're not practicing gratitude. Practicing gratitude will ultimately make you grateful, and that's like riding a bike. You try the first time you ride the bike, you fall a few times and you forget. Sometimes you forget to say Baruch Hashem. Sometimes you forget to say the bracha. Sometimes you feel like saying the bracha. Sometimes you don't feel like saying the bracha. Sometimes you forget. But when you keep on trying and you push yourself and you repeatedly practice, will ultimately help you and help us become more grateful people. Finally, for a last source, I want to see the source from the Siddur. So we've seen rabbinical sources, we've seen biblical ones. Let's look at our Siddur. The Siddur is the most used book in Judaism. It's maybe the most neglected one in terms of studying and analyzing the Siddur. It's the book that's mostly used. We use it every single day. Shachit, Mincha, Arvit. And if you're saying Birkat Hamazon every day, then you're using it for Birkat Hamazon. And if you're saying the blessings or the after blessings, and you need to use a Siddur, so you say it as well. If you're traveling, you need to say Tfilat HaDerech. Right? There's also gratitude. And then you're using it for that. It's the mostly used book in Judaism. That goes without saying. But it's the most neglected one in terms of study, in terms of analyzing, instead of really being inspired from the Siddur. How many of us could truly say, wow, today I was inspired by the Siddur? Yes, you might have heard a Dvar Torah, might have a shiur, a class, a conference that has inspired you. I mean, when was the last time we could truly and honestly say that we are inspired by the Siddur? So this is food for thought. Take the time and look at the Siddur next time, and see how you could find your stopping point for gratitude. And I'll let you do that on your own. In the meantime, let's see about a source for gratitude, and we'll see a few of them, namely two, most importantly, two of them that we find in the daily tefillah, which is another tool that Judaism provides to express gratitude. Daily tefillah, as we mentioned, solidifies our obligation to recite brachot and provides the language to recite the blessings and formally acknowledge and articulate our gratitude. One of the purposes of prayer is the grateful acknowledgement of the gifts we have been given. Through prayer, the rabbis gave us both the obligation and the language to practice a life of gratitude on a daily basis. So the first text would be, and I think you've probably guessed which one I will be reciting now. So it's the Modeh Ani, and this is recited upon waking in the morning. We acknowledge God's compassion and restoring us the life each day. The first expression of our daily lives is gratitude. Modeh Ani lefanecha melech chai vekayam she'echezarta bi nishmati bechemla rabba emunatecha. I thank you, living and eternal ruler, for restoring my soul to me with compassion. You are faithful beyond measure. What a beautiful prayer to start the day with. What a beautiful way in expressing your gratitude to the creator of the universe, the one that gave you back your life as you went to sleep, and he gave you back not a tired not a tired soul. He gave you a refreshing soul that you were able to wake up wake up in the morning and feel refreshed. Now, there's another very beautiful blessing when that expresses how we marvel at the miraculous ways of ways our body functions. And some of you that ever knew what it is to be ill or to go through sickness, God forbid, lo lanu velo lachem, not to us and not to any of you or your families, but unfortunately sometimes it's part of our reality, and we know that even a basic thing as walking or breathing or that's so that's so basic to a healthy body, when that is taken away from us, that could be a terrible, it is not, it could be, it's a terrible thing. And we don't always recognize that. We breathe every day, we eat every day, and we walk every day, and we take things for granted, friends. We take things that for granted, that there are people out there that are not able to walk. There are people out there that struggle every day when they wake up in the morning. And that could be people with disabilities, that could be with people with, it could be people that are just going through a hard time at that specific moment, and as their health is they're not well. And that, friends, is also a reminder, and that blessing. So there, I'm sorry, I wanted to say by that we have a blessing for that also, and that blessing is, and I think you guessed it by now as I'm talking. You've guessed that blessing is the Modeh Ani, and not the Modeh, I'm sorry, the Asher Yetzar blessing. Praised are you, the blessing says, eternal our God, who rules the universe, fashioning the human body in wisdom, creating openings, arteries, glands, and organs, marvelous in structure, intricate in design. Should but one of them fail to function by being blocked or opened, it would be impossible to exist. Praised are you, Hashem, healer of all flesh, sustaining our bodies in wondrous ways. That is, friends, a marvelous blessing of the miracle of the body. And again, coming back to this idea of being grateful for even the most basic things in our lives, our ability to go to the restroom. How many of us really think how of a miracle it is to go to the bathroom? Well, guess what, friends? It is a miracle, and that miracle happens every day. We just have to find the stopping point to recognize the good, and to recognize that even such a basic thing it warrants our gratitude. It and the blessing here is the expression of that. One last one last blessing from the Siddur, which there's many more, friends, and I can't quote all of them, but I'll quote one more. I thought I only had two, but I actually have three. Modim Anachnu Lach Shatau Hashem. We are gratefully acknowledge that you are Hashem, our God, and God of our ancestors throughout all time. You are the rock of our lives, the shield of our salvation in every generation. We thank you and praise you for our lives, and that I'm sorry. We thank you and praise you for our lives that are in your hands, for our souls that are in charge, for your miracles that daily attend us, and for your wonders and gifts that accompany us evening, morning, and noon. You are good, your mercy everlasting, you are compassionate, your kindness never ending. We have always placed our hope in you. A beautiful prayer about gratitude. I would like to conclude with a story. There is a story, probably an urban legend, but full of truth nonetheless, concerning the famous violinist Itzhak Perlman. One evening, Perlman was in New York to give a concert. As a child, he had been stricken with polio, so getting on stage was no small feat for him. He wore braces on both legs and walked with two crutches. Perlman labored across the stage slowly until he reached the chair in which he seated himself. As soon as he appeared on stage that night, the audience applauded and then waited respectfully as he made his way slowly across the stage to his chair. He took his seat, signaled to the conductor to begin, and began to play. No sooner had he finished the first few bars than one of the strings on his violin snapped with gunshot-like force. At that point, Perlman was close enough to the beginning of the piece that it would have been reasonable to have brought the concert to all halt while he replaced the string to begin again. But that's not what he did. He waited a moment and then signaled the conductor to pick up just where they had left off. Perlman now had only 3 strings with which to play his soloist part. He was able to find some of the missing notes on adjoining strings, but where that wasn't possible, he had to rearrange the music on the spot in his head so it all still held together. He played with passion and artistry, spontaneously rearranging the symphony right through to the end. When he finally rested his bow, the audience sat for a moment in stunned silence. Then they rose to their feet and cheered wildly. I just got goosebumps, by the way. I don't know about you, the listeners, but I just got goosebumps. They knew they had been witness to an extraordinary display of skill and ingenuity. Perlman raised his bow to signal for quiet. You know, he said, it is the artist's task to make beautiful music with what you have left. We have to wonder, was he speaking of his violin strings or his crippled body? And it is true, and is it true only for artists? We are all lacking something, and so we are challenged to answer the question, do we have the attitude of making something beautiful out of what we have, incomplete as it may be? I leave you with that question, friends. Until next time. God bless, and Modim Anachnu Lach, as you'll find, and I wish we all do, your stopping point for gratitude.